Well, last week was the first U.S. presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and it was really hard to watch. It was, I expected nothing, and I was still disappointed. I honestly, going into this, I wasn't really sure what the point of the debate was because we already know everything there is to know about both of these candidates' views. I couldn't even imagine the voter out there who is undecided on whether they should vote for Trump or Biden. I'm fairly sure that the only actual undecided voter is just depressed progressives who aren't sure whether they're going to bother showing up at all. Well, I was wrong. This debate was so bad, so loathsome, so obviously won by Donald Trump that I honestly think Trump may have actually won new voters. It's no secret that I'm not a fan of Joe Biden and that I was planning to vote for him while holding my nose in the hopes of preserving American democracy. But the debate made it clear that he's so much worse than even I thought. If you skipped it, and I hope you did for your own mental health, Biden appeared to be moments away from death. He spoke in a weak whisper. He got confused in the middle of answers and just sort of trailed off. And for the most part, failed to hold Donald Trump accountable in any meaningful way. His camp said that he had a cold, but it looked more like he was cold from having just exited the mortuary. Trump, meanwhile, just stood there and lied. And the moderators did nothing about it. There was no fact checking. Biden did occasionally correct those lies, but not in any powerful way, despite the fact that anyone who has seen Donald Trump speak in the last year knew exactly what he would lie about. And Biden's team could have prepped some zippy one-liners to combat them, but they didn't bother doing that. For instance, he lied about the coup he attempted. He claimed that he offered Nancy Pelosi the National Guard, something he keeps saying despite the fact that it is obviously not true because Pelosi doesn't even have the authority to turn down the National Guard. Also, more importantly to me, on the topic of abortion, Trump claimed that Democrats are literally aborting babies after they're born. For the record, that wouldn't be an abortion. That would just be called murder, and it remains illegal throughout the country. No one is doing that. He also claimed that the majority of the country wanted Roe v. Wade overturned, which is the exact opposite of the truth. Roe v. Wade was and still is very popular to the point that a lot of experts have been predicting that women will turn out in November specifically to vote against Trump for that reason. It's unbelievably frustrating to fight so hard for reproductive freedoms only for a handful of conservative judges to wipe it away, and then to have this narcissistic blowhard stand there and just tell the most ridiculous, egregious lies, all while the only guy I can vote for stands there looking like Lisa Simpson staring at her dinner plate. In case you think it's not the moderator's job to fact check Donald Trump in real time, it is. They did say that they would correct any egregious lies, and they just did not feel that lies about Democrats murdering babies was egregious enough. Here's an example of a moderator doing his job.
That you wanted.
No, I did get a full House vote, and it was
I apologize. This is going to be a long evening if you speak over the facts, okay? Do you have any evidence to support that? Because law enforcement has not put that forward. I'm just curious where you're getting that causation about it. How would that work if the National Guard or the military were to come into Douglas County where you live and start rounding people up? Mr. Holtorf, you've been interrupting people constantly. I would ask you to stop. Ms. Flora, could you please answer the question?
Yes.
Bringing an out-of-state National Guardsman or the U.S. military in Douglas County, do you feel like that would work?
Not into Douglas County.
Move on. The question was about the actual work of rounding people up in Douglas County. But we took a couple tries at that.
Obviously, if Trump wins, it's going to be a disaster for women, for minorities, for democracy itself. He is a fascist, authoritarian nightmare. And I would vote for a crate of apples if that's who the Democrats put up for election against him. Regardless of what happens between now and November, I am going to vote for a Democrat. My concern is simply whether or not Trump's confident lying, especially when it takes place next to Biden looking like death warmed over no, not even warmed over, is actually going to sway undecided voters. How much emphasis do people place on looks and energy rather than actual issues? I thought it would be helpful to go back to the first televised presidential debate and think a little bit about that. It was between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, and it happened in 1960. When I was in college studying media, that debate was held up as proof of the power of a good image. Here's the story I was told. In 1960, Nixon was this well-known vice president. JFK was young, inexperienced, seen as unserious. He wasn't expected to do very well. But for that first debate, JFK's team focused on his image. They understood the power of television and decided to use it in their favor. So JFK wore makeup and a dark suit that would contrast with the gray background, while Nixon didn't think much about the visuals. He refused makeup. He wore a gray suit that blended into the background. Nixon ended up looking sweaty and sickly and old, while Kennedy looked young and bronzed and healthy. And thus, that helped seal the election for Kennedy. So there you have it. Visuals matter more than policy. We are screwed in November. Except that story I was taught as fact by my public relations professor isn't quite that simple. In the book, Getting It Wrong, Debunking the Greatest Myths in America, W. Joseph Campbell argues that we've collectively misremembered what actually happened in 1960. He points out that editorials at the time didn't focus at all on the candidates' looks. And some of them thought Nixon was pretty smooth and that he may have even gotten the upper hand in the debates. Overall, the articles in the days following the debate indicated that it was pretty much a draw. JFK won the election by an extremely tight margin, and Campbell suggests that any number of factors could have nudged him over that line. There's no actual evidence that that first debate mattered at all. So never mind. Visuals don't matter. It's all policy. We're going to be okay in November. Except there is at least one empirical study. In November of 1960, a market research firm conducted a poll in which they asked voters who they thought won that first debate. They found that people who watched it on television were more likely to say Kennedy won, while people who listened to it on the radio thought Nixon had won. Boom, there we go, empirical evidence that looks matter and we're all going to die in November. Except that survey had some issues. It was self-reported. It was conducted a month after the debate. We don't know the sample size to judge statistical significance, and it didn't control for things like party affiliation. As Stephen H. Chafee at UC Santa Barbara wrote, by 1960, those who could listen to debates only on radio were far from a random lot. Situated for the most part in remote rural areas, they were overwhelmingly Protestants and skeptical of Kennedy as a Roman Catholic candidate. Thank God. Okay, we're back to policy and apparently religion over looks. We're saved. Okay, this is my final except. Except, I found that Chafee quote in this study by James N. Druckmann, published in the Journal of Politics in 2003. Druckmann was frustrated by the lack of evidence backing up this possible myth of the first Kennedy-Nixon debate. So he set out to put this to bed once and for all. Or at least to give us some more empirical evidence to help us figure out whether or not the debate really mattered. Druckmann found 171 college students who were unfamiliar with that first debate and its surrounding mythos. He split them into two groups, and he had one group listen to the audio of the debate only, and the other group watch the televised debate. He then gave them all a questionnaire, which included a 7-point ranking on who won the debate. Sure enough, the TV viewers were significantly more likely to think that Kennedy won the debate, and they were also more likely to judge the candidates by their perceived personalities rather than their stance on the issues. So this isn't gold standard proof that JFK won thanks to that televised debate, but it is evidence in favor of the idea that, yeah, the medium really does matter. So, is that it? Are we cooked? Well, here's how Druckmann concludes his paper. Some might take my results as an indictment of television. Yet, in some contexts, imagery may serve as useful information that enhances the quality of evaluations. As Shudson asks, is television imagery so obviously superficial? Was it not important and truthful to see that Kennedy, despite his relative youth, was able to handle the most public moment of his life with assurance? Was it not important and truthful to see Nixon, despite his vast experience, looking awkward and insecure? The point is that assessing the competence of political judgments is quite complicated. One not only needs to offer a clear normative model, but in this case must also consider the relationship between issues and image and the information contained in each. It is true that television gives us more information to work with, and it's worth adding that Drucker's study showed that the TV viewers were better able to remember what was said during the debate compared to the radio listeners. So, in that respect, televised debate is a good thing. And, we did get a lot more information from that debate. And as much as I hate what I learned, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe the Democrats will finally accept that there's a serious problem here and address it head on. Maybe the next debate, if there is one, will include fact checking. That might be fun. Maybe they'll choose to have Biden step down and run that crate of apples instead. That could be fun too. Maybe everything will be okay.
You want to go for a walk? Yeah?
Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.